Good day and welcome back to another Dbz Dokkan video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the banners that you can use your celebration tickets on, and we're going to discuss which one I think you should summon on. Now this is going to be a long video, and my process is basically I'm going to give each banner a point if there's a unit I think you should summon for, and then I'll give half a point if I think the unit's like a good byproduct to get. Then I give no points if the unit's not worth it. And then maybe we'll weigh them up and see which banner is better, because it's quite difficult. But overall, honestly, first things first, always summon on the one that has units you like, and always summon on ones where it has units you don't have. Generally that indicates value. So we'll start with the first one. So right off the bat, Super Saiyan Goku and Gohan, really good unit, great leader skill. It's basically like a 200% coverage for a ton of units in the game. Goku, at 55% can get you caught out a little bit, especially if you can't dodge. But Gohan, the transformation is always really good. And with dupes, this unit just gets better and better. AGL Gohan's great on the team. The leader skill coverage is for him really well. And also they have great coverage with Goku's family for a lot of really good units. Tech Goku, AGL Gohan, really good stuff. Majin Vegeta, also a really good unit. If we get a Sword of Hope Trunks, could also be a sneaky little buff for him. He gains damage reduction based on having a Trunks unit, and that largely determines how strong he is. Vegeta and Trunks, the LR was a very big buff for him. Sword of Hope Trunks could be the same thing if they're able to be run on a team together well enough. So I'd give a point for Vegeta and a point for Goku Gohan, so we're sitting at like 2. Raditz, best unit in the game by far, so 10 points, easy pick. Now Raditz is unfortunately a unit that was kind of designed, I think, with ESBR and SBR in mind, but they just kind of didn't read the room properly. A couple things don't work out and he's just not really there. Captain Ginyu is a sneaky little unit that's quite great, and he'll get a point because his lead skill is great. It covers actually a lot of the predominantly good extreme units, at least right now, and he's also a pretty solid unit himself. Now, getting him and using him largely depends on whether you've managed to pull at least one of the banner units, being Strength Rakumen Gildo or Int Jason Berta. But if you have either of those, you can make him work. Plus he's got 2 great free-to-play options in the Battlefield LRs, the Tech and Physical Ginyus. So he's a really solid unit. Now Kid Buu kind of sits in this weird space with a lot of Buu units, whereby he is a really good unit and his team is bad, and then you wish his team would get buffed, and then his team does get buffed, but then the unit now kind of falls off a little bit, and that's kind of Kid Buu's situation. He's still a good unit. His leader skill, the 130% defense, is a bit bumming. He's still a good unit. He just needs dupes now. Whereas before at 55% he was really solid. He needs dupes now to really be like a super solid option. Probably would give him half a point. I think the Buu team, with AGL Super Buu, Strength Buu, I think they're there. But they need a bit more. The Tech Androids, on the other hand, great unit. Lots of flexibility with them, the key nullification, the orb changing, the active skill that skips the enemy's turn. Their leader skill leaves a little bit to be desired. Future Saga's okay, especially since we're getting some buffs now with the Worldwide Celebration, so there's definitely movement there, especially on the extreme side. Worldwide Chaos is also somewhat okay because the Masus are generally part of it. But yeah, overall they're just a great floating unit. They do that kind of function whereby they feel rock solid in a lot of different positions, except for maybe first slot tank. But I really like them. I think they're a great pickup, so definitely a full point for this banner there. The next unit that we're taking a look at is AGL Gohan. Now this guy's leader skill is not great. Heavenly Events isn't the world's most exciting leader skill. It's not going to blow anyone's mind. Gohan, however, is pretty solid. One thing I will say is with dupes, Gohan can look very impressive. He's a great support for Hybrid Saiyans, Goku's family, and his active skill is actually very good. Giving him guard, giving the rest of the turn defense, healing, is something that's very useful, and I have used him in a lot of top content. Overall, I'd say because of his leader skill and because of his link set and because there are some restrictions on him, probably half a point. But he is a really good unit, especially if you can get a dupe in him or you have him and are getting a dupe. He's a unit that becomes a lot more accessible because he starts to stack a bit faster, and then he doesn't feel like he's so long in the tooth. Into Vegeta, not the greatest, not a bad unit by any means. None of the units realistically are bad, but Vegeta doesn't feel as usable as physical Goku, whereas Goku's great for nuking events. Vegeta just doesn't feel like he functions well enough. He's a good unit nonetheless, but I do think he's probably not a top tier choice for GT heroes. Nice Vegeta's family leader skill, but not really there. And the same with Videl. Her leader skill, Defenders of Justice, is kind of debatable, but one thing I will say, she can still do some pretty good damage. The thing is she needs a bit more. She doesn't have enough to really be a top choice, and her team's a bit on the average side. The Gohan and the Goten and Trunks suffer similarly from the fact that youth just doesn't seem to have a unit that facilitates them. They realistically are a great second slot unit, but they need a first slot tank. Now Janemba I'm going to give the banner half a point for, because I actually like Janemba. Janemba does two things really well. One, he's one of the few corroded body and mind leads, which by the way covers Goku Rose. But he's also actually a great floating support. Now his support is obviously a little bit situational because it relies on orbs, but he can very easily get his damage reduction, and he has guard. So he's actually a very solid floating option from a defensive standpoint. Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, unfortunately needs a bit of an easy A. He's great with dupes to a point, but once he loses a bit of that passive, he does fall off, and events traditionally push just beyond that barrier, especially if you don't have like a Mega Chad team. He's not terrible, and his animations are beautiful, but I can't really give a point for him. And the same is with Kefla. Kefla's a really fun unit that's great for a lot of players. AGL Kale did buff her, but it still feels like she needs a bit more to be a top tier pick. The Tech Boo also suffers similarly, but he definitely needs an easy A. Now Strength Kaioken Goku, here we get a full point, and it's very obvious why. He's probably the highest level output damage TUR in the entire game, and he deals huge damage. He does need facilitating to access his full power. You need certain components, but I will say just from a raw standpoint, he's pretty good. Now the next couple units aren't bad, but we're not really noticing anything particular about them up until we get to around Physical Piccolo. Now Physical Piccolo is really one of those units that you probably forget about after you easy him. However, he does have a mechanic that always keeps him relevant in the fact that he can see super attacks. Seeing super attacks is largely considered one of the most powerful abilities in the game, and Piccolo has it unconditionally. Now obviously facilitating a Namekian's always a bit difficult, but he's really solid. Tech Trunks could get an easy A, but I can't give a point for him right now, and Hit, although very good with his easy A, is very situational. AGL Gogeta on the other hand is probably my favorite easy A still to a TUR to this day. He has huge damage output, 70% evasion once transformed, and very, very decent levels of defense. He also has a great leader skill with Movie Heroes and Fusion Warriors. Next we have MVP 17, one of those units that kinda gets added in because he is a solid unit, a great support, but he also facilitates the Strength Kaioken Goku. So he's one of those units that kinda doubles up in facilitating another great unit, and he's one of the few pieces that can help Goku to work. Very similarly with Vegeta, both of them will probably get half a point for the banner. Vegeta is a great unit, however he also is more a facilitator than anything else. The next couple units aren't bad. Again, no unit here is terrible, especially for new players, but they need a little bit more help, or they're just not as good as some of the other options we've mentioned. Physical or Int SS3 Bardock is great, but he's still a bit limited being SS3 and crossover orientated, and the Tech Bardock doesn't really facilitate him as much as I'd like. The next couple units are all more situational without being necessarily bad. I will give an honorable mention and half a point for Omega Shenron. off of the basis that Omega Shenron is going to be needed in future to pretty much facilitate the only GT bosses team you can run, so that does help out. SS3 Gotenks, a great damage dealer. Janemba is a solid option. Kid Buu, good damage dealer but a bit limited. And then half a point for probably the longest running unit in the game. Super 17 with his damage reduction remains still one of the longer running durable units in the game, and he's a great choice. Physical Final Form Cooler, great damage dealer, but unfortunately not enough to really earn a point for the banner. There's suitable replacements for him across the board, and similarly with Strength, SS4 Goku. Still a great unit with his easy aim, just not necessarily at the required level. Merge Zamasu is a decent support. Strength Cell has a decent coverage. AGL Rose is the same, and Physical all the same. The units start to tend to fall off a little bit here. Not that any of them are necessarily bad, just again not necessarily crucial picks. And Vegeta earns half a point by being still the tankiest SS3 option in the game and suitable for certain teams as that pseudo tank, as long as the event doesn't run too long. But yeah, now kind of covered everything on this banner. I think overall, when I tally it all up at the end, it came to around 11 points or so, which honestly is not bad. I think that's a pretty good turnout. Quite some favorable units, but very strong peaks on this banner. Now we start to look at the second banner. Now the second banner, starts off a little bit worse, and not because the unit is worse, but because unfortunately extreme teams just don't get the love. Whereas Goku Gohan has a very strong leader skill and the ability to facilitate teams in the future due to how regularly Goku's family gets buffs, Cell is kind of the opposite. Cell is a fantastic unit, and that is awesome, except for the fact that his team and his teams don't really get the love they need or frequent enough buffs to keep him in the top tier of the meta. Now, with that being said, he's still excellent. And with Int Perfect Cell, he still has a place in top meta teams. He's a good unit, they make a great pairing. Yes, I wish one of them was a first slot tank, because they both kinda don't want to be in that position. But overall, at the end of the day, he's still great and earns a point. Now Goku, comparatively to Kid Buu, in this situation, he is slightly better off than Kid Buu. Now, I'm not saying he's grotesquely a better unit, enough so to earn half a point. But the difference between him and Kid Buu is that while Kid Buu is unfortunately required to essentially be facilitated by other units, Goku thrives off the fact that he's still a high volume damage dealer and has a very solid leader skill that's the only lead for accelerated battle. So whereas we had replacements for other categories, accelerated battle I believe Goku's still the only lead for, and on that merit alone kinda gets half a point. The God Boys are also a unit that's very debatable. Is it a full point or is it half a point? They're a very good unit, but they feel like they don't facilitate enough as a singular unit. One thing I will say is Realm of the Gods is probably going to get a couple buffs with the Zamasu and Rose. Will these guys be the lead you want to run? It's questionable. But one thing I will say is that they are a very solid unit. Dupes make them feel very good, although the transformation to Vegeta always feels a little bit lackluster or more lackluster. They're a very solid unit though, and their team is incredibly solid, and I think overall they probably deserve a full point. Pan is also one of those units where you raise that question. Pan as a unit is very good, but is she crucial to her team? Now Bond of Friendship is a debatable team. Pan does need some facilitating, but not too much. But her links are pretty weak, and her positioning is always up for debate. Is she a first slot tank because of her 50% damage reduction? After Super, she loses a lot of that defensive capability. For me, any unit that can one-turn AGL Broly, regardless of type advantage, is probably a unit that's pretty good. And I think Pan is still worthy of 1 point. I think she's a bit more difficult to facilitate, but I think she is still a solid component to any GT Heroes team. And I think for me personally, she's still fine to earn that slot of like a unit you want. She's definitely a unit I would want, and so yeah, I think you have to accept that and recognize that, even if maybe there's some contingencies to it. As much as it pains me to say it, I can't even give half a point for AGL Trunks. I love this unit's super attack animations, but the transformation animation feels a bit lackluster, and it's always weird to have a unit that feels better in base form than transformed state. He lacks a really suitable partner for him. If he gets a Trunks or a first slot tank with Cold Judgment that can facilitate him, he could be way better, but for now he just lacks a little bit to really be at his top level. Kale and Caulifla feel like a half a point unit. Although they are very good and AGL Kale gave them some buffs, they kind of sit in that realm of being a really solid unit that just doesn't have all the means to facilitate where they're at. AGL Kale, AGL LR Kale and Caulifla and them are definitely the backbone of a strong Universe 6 team. We need maybe one Kefla within the next 6 months, and you could probably see them making a resurgence within the top meta. So I'd give them half a point on that merit alone. I think they are still a strong unit. I think their leader skill lacks a tiny bit, but I do think they're strong enough and will helpful enough to players to really conquer a lot of content in the game. Maybe they don't solo red zone, but I think personally speaking with AGL Kale, they got enough buffs. Now Vegeta has a great leader skill, which is great for beginner players. Pure Saiyans is huge as a category and helps out a lot of new players. He's a great volume damage dealer, but he just lacks the things to really make him a top tier meta pick. He needs dupes to really kind of hit the heights you want to see him hit. He's a fun unit and has great animations, and personally speaking, I think there's room for him, just not really, maybe anything more than half a point. Goku, however, scores a full point, and it may sound weird to say that over Vegeta, but the big thing that keeps Goku so relevant is a Goku's family leader skill, alongside as well the crucial fact that he's a great nuking unit. You will have seen me use him to complete a ton of speed and nuking challenges recently, and the fact that he can earn you pretty much 60 stones between all of the nuking events alone with relative ease at 55% kind of means you gotta give a full point. I know there are other nuking units, but he just feels so easy to use, and he really does kind of give that ability to beat certain events. It may not be the hardest events in the world, but they're events that he does beat quite well. Then we have Int Broly. Now Int Broly is a unit I wish I could give a point or half a point to, and I debated giving a point for him or half a point for him for a long time. The big thing that hinders Broly is his 18% damage reduction only kicks in after supering when he's facing hybrid or pure Saiyans, and 18% on its own beforehand doesn't feel like enough. Now with dupes, Broly stacks at a decent pace, and he can do decent damage due to his inherent crit and additionals, but he always feels like he needs dupes and he needs a Broly to facilitate him. He needs a first slot tank Broly or just a first slot tank that gives him a good links, and then he can really come up to speed. But for now, he just doesn't feel like it's all there. And yes, you get him, but outside of movie bosses, which you'll have a ton of LR options soon to get, he doesn't feel like he's there. Paikuhan, much like Janemba, scores half a point. I would actually give Paikuhan a full point if his leader skill was better. Paikuhan, like in a non-joking way, is great. His active skill delays the opposition, he can get evasion easily, he can easily provide support, and his defense is not terrible. Unironically, I would say Paikuhan is actually a fantastic unit, even to this day, in a lot of content, and I think if he had a better leader skill, I would give a full point for him, because I just think he has so many situations where he is usable, his active skills come in handy, and he's been great. Bojack, Space Traveling Warriors lead, is a solid unit, but he suffers from the fact that he only links well with Bojack units, and unfortunately, he seems to have fallen off a little bit. Not a terrible choice, but just not a unit that I can realistically give any points to, just considering the strength of the units we've been giving points to and half points to. Bojack doesn't feel like he's in that realm. He doesn't have any usability outside of being a unit himself. The same as with Frieza. There's no specific event where I say, wow, I really wish I had this Frieza. And Wicked Bloodlines has kind of overtaken him a bit. He's still a great unit and he can stack and he's got a lot of flexibility with his transformation, but there is a little bit lacking towards him. Maybe if you got him rainbowed, he can help facilitate Strength Kaioken Goku, but I don't think there's enough. Now Tech Mystic Gohan, that's a unit we can give a full point to. This unit stands the test of time, greatly stacking attack and defense whilst also having guard is just a recipe for being a good unit. Hybrid Sands also gives him some relevancy in terms of leader skill, and overall he stood the test of time. There's not much I can say. Gotenks is really good, but unfortunately also feels like he's just not there as a pointage unit, although I do love him as a unit. And Bardock needs probably an easy A. His leader skill doesn't provide enough, and he's a solid unit, just unspectacular. We then have Int, Super Saiyan 3 Goku, Android 13, and then kind of come to the next real big unit. Now this is Strength Cooler, and his Easy A brings him to relevancy. He was pretty good before his Easy A, but his leader skill is great. Transformation Boost, Terrifying Conquerors. His Easy A makes him stack defense. He's a multiple situational support. This guy gets a full point, and if you could give a point and a half, you probably would. He and Strength a la Cooler are the backbone of a lot of extreme teams, and it shows. Cooler's really solid, even at 55%. Then we have Super Saiyan Goku, a unit that always seems to get lost, but honestly is a very solid unit. He does have a little bit of understanding to get him to that point where he's super duper rock solid, but he is very good. And once he's transformed, he's actually an incredibly reliable unit for all forms of hard content. A Super Saiyan lead skill and his flexibility leaves him in a position where I can give half a point, but he does feel like he needs dupes and the understanding to make him work. Zamasu sits like Tech Trunks, whereby I'm not giving a point for either of them, but I do think they're Easy A, which could definitely earn a point. Zamasu's Easy A could definitely also be very good, depending on how they go with his damage reduction. So that's a space to watch. I think Zamasu could be the sneaky highlight Easy A king of the celebration if done right, so I just want to highlight that. I'm going to give a full point or half a point for Vegeta. Vegeta gets his Easy A pretty shortly on Global after the celebration, and he's already got it on JP. It's not as exciting as people maybe want, but he's a pure Saiyans lead, and you can't discount how good that is for the game. We then have Int Gohan, or Goku Youth I should say, sorry. A great unit, just unfortunately overshadowed by his physical counterpart. Then we have Physical Broly, who unlike Gogeta, who gets a full point, probably gets half a point. I'd give him a full point. Movie Bosses is a good lead, Full Power is a good lead. He's a huge AoE damage dealer and great for World Tournament. He gets a full point, let's be real. Int Goku Black is kind of the same as Masu, could be Easy 8, becoming a much better unit. And Metal Cooler is a really solid unit, and I'll probably give half a point to. He's great, actually, just in a ton of situations. The only problem is it's debatable on where his slot is on the team. He can have really good defense, like 500, 600k. It's just his positioning's a bit wonky. Now, Boo is great. Boo, unfortunately, link set means he's kind of tied to Boo units, but AGL Super Boo kind of gives him that reprieve. His Easy A really made him solid, and he's very versatile. Definitely give half a point. Transforming Frieza's okay. Full Power Goku's decent with his Easy A, but I just feel like GT's not there until the LR version comes out, and then he gets replaced by that. And then Physical Gohan is solid, but again, could get buffed in Celebration, but feels like he's a little bit off the beat. Turles is a fantastic unit, but there's not enough super units to really facilitate him, which is kind of the big shame. There's not enough super based content. And then Rose is pretty good. Now Rose I do like a lot. I think he meshes well, and he could be a big receiver of all the buffs coming to his team. Physical Vegeta, outside of everything, honestly, probably not worth considering a point towards, and same with kind of like the remaining units here. Arguably, Strength Ultimate Gohan you could give a point to. He does need dupes, but he's actually a good facilitator for the Hybrid Saiyans team. And yeah, then things start to, again, like the other banner, kind of fall off. Now I think if you add up all the points, we're looking at around 10.5. Technically could be 11.5, depending on how you swing a couple of them. The thing is here, honestly speaking, both banners are about even up till a point. The big difference between the banner is I think the top banner, the Goku Gohan banner, has better leader skills overall, and units that are more suited towards facilitating teams towards content, whereas the bottom banner feels a lot more like units that can help round out teams that you may want to make, especially on the extreme side. The bottom banner really fills out Terrifying Conquerors, it fills out the future Goku Black kind of Future Saga Worldwide Chaos team. So it feels like there's more facilitating units on the bottom one, especially towards the extreme side, whereas the top banner feels like it has its own kind of rhetoric of really strong characters and options from a leader skill basis. Overall, if I had to pick new players, I'd probably say go for the top one. For people looking to facilitate extreme teams, look at the bottom one a little bit more. But that's going to be it from me. There's not too much more to say. It was a very long video, so I do apologize, but I wanted to give my thoughts and opinions. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.